Welcome to the Power Source Podcast. I'm Jason Smith, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. Tonight, we have a really awesome interview that we're going to be doing with my good friend, Mike Garofalo. Mike, how's it going?
Great to see you, Jason. Good to be here.
Now, Mike is the managing editor for Victory News. I know when you started, you were doing news breaks for us, and that was even before Flashpoint launched, which was a show that I was intimately involved with for a number of years. Tell me how you came, tell me a little bit about your background first, and then how you came to join us there at Victory Channel.
Well, I came out of college, went to Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania, worked on Wall Street, went into sales. And then during the first Gulf War, I became a news junkie. I was living in Hoboken, New Jersey. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen of that. And that conflict, I decided I was very interested in TV news. So my roommate from Hoboken, New Jersey, blew out his knee and needed a ride into Manhattan to sign up for grad school at the news school. And I walked into the lobby, picked up a catalog, looked through it, and I saw on camera TV news. I got in line, signed up for the class. It was taught by the wife of a writer for Dan Rather. And it was me and like 15 girls. I'm like, this is heaven. Are you kidding me? And so that's how it started. And then I at some point I finally said, you know what, I got to go back to grad school. I mean, and to get my master's in journalism if I really want to do this. And at some point I ended up in DC, working in DC, and then I quit my job, moved to Virginia Beach, went to Regent University, got my master's there, got hired by CBN News halfway through. I went to the 96 conventions, actually, both of them, as an intern with CBN News. So I went to Chicago, went to San Diego. I was in charge of all the high profile guests. Things went really well. I came back to Virginia Beach. They hired me full time. And then after I finished grad school, they sent me to DC to the Bureau, worked on the Monica Lewinsky story.
Okay, wait, I got to stop you right there.
Sure.
I did not know that you worked on the Monica Lewinsky story. That was quite the scandal back in the day.
It was. As a matter of fact, I had a source in the Pentagon that told me that she came back to her office at one point when I guess they had changed the phone system out. And she looked down and she saw the new phone and she started freaking out. I also knew that her dad was a doctor. So I was sending fax messages to her dad in LA. Never responded, but I gave it everything I could. And, you know, me and a couple of my photographer and audio guy were staking out the Watergate complex with all the other networks. And, you know, she comes out of the Watergate complex, starts heading to her lawyer's office, Plato Jacaris, and I think on K Street probably. And we all followed them there. And then they went into a building and, you know, one reporter went this way, another reporter went that way to try to find out where she was going. Monitored that. I was actually when I was in DC, I got to go to the Bill Clinton State of the Union after the Monica Lewinsky situation broke. And that was really interesting. And do you remember Tom DeLay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Tom DeLay walks out into Statutory Hall where all the reporters are waiting, walks right up to me and just starts ripping Bill Clinton. And so that was really interesting. So then I decided I wanted to get on the air. So I sent some resumes out because I was a writer. I was a producer for CBN News. And I got a job offer, a main anchor job offer in Twin Falls, Idaho, the middle of nowhere. That began my on-air career, if you will.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, so I knew you had quite the storied history. I did not know that it went back that far. That's amazing. You know, I feel like the last 5 years, so much has shifted in media and in news. I know you, with your history, you would agree. I'm sure. But coming out of the 2020 election, there was a lot of people that really had a problem believing what they were hearing and seeing. I mean, I think it raised a lot of questions. We were coming out of the COVID lockdowns where people were trying to figure that out. And church people were being told that they couldn't worship. They couldn't go to church in person. Then the election takes place. There's a lot of questions about the election. Then we have this vaccine that's released. There was a lot of misinformation that was out there and a lot of people going, man, who do I trust? And in the midst of all that was birthed Flashpoint and Victory News. And I think one of the things that I've heard more as I've traveled the country is how they turn in and watch the show because they know they're going to get truth. How important is it for us to give them truth in this crazy culture that we're living in?
I mean, that's why we're here. That's what we do. So everything we do is to give them a clear picture of what is happening in a story. And while the topics we choose may be more conservative, if you will, the stories we tell are very, you know, you hear from both sides. They're very fair, and I finally ended up going back. Well, I ended up starting Victory News, doing those cut-ins you talked about,
Right.
2 or 3 or 4 minutes out of my garage in Colorado Springs, and then I morphed that into going live in Colorado Springs out of my garage. So the interviews were done at KCM in Fort Worth, and and I did the news mostly out of Colorado Springs. So that's kind of how that morphed. But the bottom line is, you got to tell the truth, you got to tell the story, you got to try to tell the whole story. Otherwise, you're no better than the other guy.
There's 2 things I remember about those early days of news. One is I remember there was a couple of times when you were in your garage and you were live with us, and I would hear this beeping, and it was the trash truck coming down the coming down
The alley. There are
the
alleys
alley
behind
behind your
houses in
house,
Colorado Springs. Exactly.
and I would start laughing because I knew the trash truck was coming, and you look mortified every time it happened. It was so funny.
Well,
And then the other
one time there was a.
Go ahead.
Let me just throw this out there. There was. I guess I don't know if he's a homeless guy or not, but there was a guy that ended up sleeping in the alley, and I could hear, as I'm on the air, I could hear him snoring through the wall.
Oh, man, that's hysterical. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
So.
The other thing I remember was, I think it was like the second week of Victory News, we had a massive snowstorm. We called it snowpocalypse that hit Texas, and it shut everything down. And I remember that we had just launched. So, I mean, it was very, very early. And I lost power here at the house. We lost internet. So my family went and bunked up with my father-in-law and his wife, and because they were the only ones that we knew that had power and internet. And so you were recording news breaks from your place, sending them to me, and I was editing them together, sitting at my father-in-law's table, just so that we had something that we could get on the air that week. And we made it. Every day there was something that was on the air. So it was really important that we continued to get news out to the people. But those early days, we've come a long way since then.
A long way. Yep,
Yeah.
I agree completely.
So, as again, we've talked a little bit about the midterms coming up, but where do you media in general has shifted? We know that uh, the 24 cycle news started several years back, and that's been kind of a norm. But now we've seen a shift away from broadcast with the internet and streaming. How has that changed the game?
I mean, it's completely changed the game. And the thing is, if you want to really find out what's happening in the news, if you watch certain channels and then you watch certain other channels, so I say on the other side of the spectrum, you're going to think you're living in two different countries.
Mm,
So, first of all, I think people need to choose wisely on where they get their news, and they probably should, on occasion, look at something else, another source, to say, "Am I really getting what's really happening? Is this the
that's
whole
good.
picture?"
Yeah.
But you're right though. So you have all these online platforms, that you can just go to whatever it may be and watch your news and not have to go to broadcast. And the more I watch, I guess I would call the legacy media, if you will, the more I get disappointed that I mean that I can't go there. And I mean, like, what was I thinking all these years? Was it this bad 15 years ago? I don't think so, but I don't know.
It definitely seems to be more out there. I feel like both sides have become more bold in their delivery. One of the things that has happened too is these algorithms. You'll hear a lot about algorithms. Even this week when we talked about Charlie Kirk, the algorithms are sending this and that. What happens is, I believe, it keeps people in their own little silos where it's kind of like they're only hearing the things that they want to hear. And I don't know about you, but for me, one of the things that I love to do is follow the other side, because I feel like if we don't know what they're thinking or what they're saying, we don't know how to interact with them. We don't know how to combat them. So I actually follow a lot of the left on a regular basis, which means I get fed a lot of the junk from the left as well, which can be very heavy. I mean, as well as I do that there's a lot of junk out there, but I think it keeps me from being bombarded with just the nice stuff that they think that I want to hear.
Well, I mean, reality is you're keeping your eyes wide open, but the most important part is that you're understanding. Okay, this is the left. I gotta take this with a grain of salt. Is how much of this is actually fact and how much of it is fiction, and then you can and then you watch the other side and you say, okay, you meet somewhere in the middle, but the bottom line is you're getting a perspective so that if you really think about it for a second. Um, my dad's got some friends that he's older and he's got some buddies that they go walking with in my hometown every a couple times a week and meets them for coffee and whatnot. Some of these guys don't really get what's going on politically. And my dad's very politically astute, and so he'll explain something to them, and they're like, "Well, no, that's not the case." And he'll bring the facts and bring the receipts and say, "Take a look at this." And some of these people just aren't really paying attention or aren't trying to find out the truth, and they're just taking what they hear, where they hear it as fact, and that's not always the best place to be.
Not at all. I believe that most Christians don't get involved in the political process or in the even the current events discussions because they just don't feel properly equipped to talk about it. I mean, their eyes glaze over because they're not educated. They don't take the time, they don't put in the work, as it were, to know what's happening. And I think that's a real failure on our part. We need to know what's going on in our world because how are we supposed to impact our culture if we don't even know what's happening in culture?
Oh, without question. And to go back to my dad for a quick second, my dad's the kind of guy. He'll sit there and he'll write a letter out to Mitch. I can't tell you how many letters he's written to Mitch McConnell, how many letters he's written to congressmen and senators from New Jersey where he lives. I mean, he's not been shy. Granted, he rarely hears back, but he does hear back on occasion.
You told me a story several years back where you met, I believe it was James Carville, uh, at one of the events that you were at. Tell me that story again. I remember that was pretty funny.
So it was a 1996 Democratic convention. It was in Chicago. And James Carville was going to be a guest on the 700 Club with Pat Robertson. And I was in charge of basically escorting him there. And I remember he was in a jolly mood. He was in a great mood. He comes over, he gets a phone call, and then he comes back, and his mood had drastically changed. And I'm not positive, but that's the day that the news came out about Dick Morris, with the call girl or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
that news broke, and
yeah.
I'm thinking that's the phone call he got, but I don't know. But he was a different guy when he came back. He still went on the 700 Club, but he was not anywhere near as enthusiastic.
I don't know if I'm having a harder time imagining James Carville with Pat Robertson or James Carville being jovial. Either one of those just doesn't really ring. Like I don't know how to
Right,
visualize that. But
right.
one of his most popular statements that he made back in that era was, "It's the economy, stupid." And you know, I thought about that this week with all of the stuff and all the things that have been discussed in regards to Charlie, kind of bringing this back to where we started. It's the ideology, stupid. I mean, we're not upset. I mean, obviously, we're upset at the person that took Charlie's life, and obviously, we mourn for that. But really, there's an ideology at work, Mike, in our world that really wants to take out those that are freedom loving, God fearing people in this country, and that ideology is pushing us to a really dangerous place as a nation. Why don't you speak to that real quick?
Well, I read this somewhere today, and when I read it, I agreed with it. I mean, we're in a battle of good versus evil right now. It's as simple as that: good versus evil, and it's a very scary place to be. And people really need to wake up. And that's why it's great that there's an organization like a Turning Point USA. Just imagine for a second, Charlie Kirk did not do what he did over the last 10 years, and did not start all these chapters, did not give these kids on college campuses that don't agree with the left a place to go. Just imagine that for a second. They'd be overcome by their professors, by the administrators, by fellow students, and they'd sit there and they'd feel like they had no voice. At least they have a voice right now, and that is going to grow, and that's the one bright shining light I think that the young people in this country have seen and have followed and are going to continue to follow, because that movement's not going anywhere. It's just going to grow, and that is a good thing for this country.
So I feel like this was definitely a line in the sand moment, and the reaction online has been something that's just really, uh, on one hand, it's troubled me to see the viciousness from those on the left and how they have reacted. But on the other side, it's given me a lot of hope to see the people that have been sitting on the sidelines and finally said, enough is enough. And I'm going to get out there and I'm going to let my voice be heard. I think that's pardon the term, but I really feel like that's the turning point, don't you?
I agree with you completely. I mean, I hate to say it, but the left is turning out to be the party of hate, and it's the rhetoric that they're spewing, the hate they're spewing, and what you see online from these people celebrating somebody that was tragically killed by a bullet. I mean, it's horrible beyond. That's the only word I can I can use to describe it.
Well, our prayers definitely go out to Erica and her family and the
Yes.
entire Turning Point team, and we're just going to be praying for them as they walk through these dark days. You know, pivoting to the midterms, though, what we found out in the last few days is just how crucial that Charlie was to this last election. I mean, we've heard now that he was intimately involved with the coming together between Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Trump campaign. He was all in the mix with almost every cabinet position that was recommended and then ultimately confirmed. So as we move into these midterms and we have Senate races and we have House races, do you feel like this is that line in the sand moment that is going to actually benefit the GOP as we go into these midterms?
I think it is. I think it is. I think the American people are getting disgusted with what they've seen from the left over the last couple of days, and they realize what they're dealing with. And you've got, oh my gosh, you've got the governor of Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, calling Donald Trump a fascist. You've got AOC calling him a fascist. You've got all these people that they spun the rhetoric to give people like this kid from Utah the motivation to do what they did. If the rhetoric wasn't so heated and so hateful, I don't think he ever would have did what he did, and it's just it's sad.
I agree. Charlie was definitely talking to a generation of kids that didn't feel like anyone was listening, and so
Mhm.
it's been quite the week. Listen, Mike, I appreciate you joining us tonight, and I want to encourage everybody, if you don't watch Victory News, watch Victory News Monday through Friday, 6 Eastern, 5 Central. And you can also visit us online. Our online website is what?
GoVictory.com.
GoVictory.com. And our new YouTube page also is VictoryNewsTonight.com as well. You can go
Yes.
there and see our new YouTube page that just launched. Every broadcast is going to be there, and we encourage you to watch. So, tell you what, thank you for joining us tonight for the Power Source Podcast.